Let's take a look at Lesson 1-1. Lesson 1-1 is titled, Where Does the Time Go? We're going to be looking at percentages, pie charts, and bar graphs in this lesson. Underneath where it says Section 1-1, Class, you'll see a time chart filled out by someone saying where they occupy their time. C is for class time, H is for homework, S is for sleep, W is for work, O is for other. So we're actually going to have you count these up. If you want to pause the video and go ahead and count them, you're welcome to. If you'd rather not and have me give you the answers, you can follow along and I'll give you the answers. If you were to actually count all these numbers, you would find that the time this student spends in class is 15 hours. The time the student spends doing homework is 32 hours. The time the student spends sleeping is 54 hours. Work is 15 hours. And other is 52 hours. Without adding up all the hours from the table, how can I decide what the total number of hours should be? Well, we're dealing with 7 days in a week times how many hours in a day? 24. Go ahead and use your calculator to do 7 times 24. And we do find out that the total number of hours should be 168 hours. If you add up all the hours in the box above in number 1, it should total up to be 168. Verify that, make sure it matches. Number 3 says most college advisors will tell you that a good rule of thumb is to allow 2 hours of study time outside of class for each hour spent in class. Is the student that filled out the table in question 1 following that advice? Well, the first question is, how many hours do they spend in class? They have 15 hours of class time. If I multiply that by 2, that says the student should spend at least 30 hours studying. How many hours does the student spend studying? 32. So we're good. The student is indeed spending enough time studying. One really good way to analyze the amount of time spent on each activity is to compute percentages. The word percent literally means per 100. So if you found that you spent 42% of your time playing a trendy new game on your phone, that would mean that you should either consider psychological help or that for every 100 hours of time you spend 42 of them playing the game. Write a fraction with the number of hours spent by a student in class in the numerator and the total number of hours in the denominator. You're going to be using what we found in questions 1 and 2. How many hours is the student in class? The student is in class for 15 hours. How many total hours are there in 1 week? We calculated that above. I believe we said there are 168. So as a fraction, the student spends 15 out of 168 on class. Number 5 says to convert this fraction from question 4 into a percent, use a calculator to perform the division. So take 15 divided by 168. Your calculator is going to give you a decimal. Let's go to 3 decimal places. It's going to, when you divide that out, your calculator should give you 0.089. To convert to percent form, move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So take my decimal and move it 2 places to the right, and as a percent, this is about 8.9%. So let's fill in a new chart similar to the chart we did in number 1, but instead of hours, let's convert it all to percents. So for example, I'm going to round, they do ask me to round to the nearest whole percent. So when I put 8.9 in here, for class time, I'm going to round that to 9%. We are going to assume these are all percents, so I won't write the percent each time. To figure out the homework, you take the number of homework hours, 32, divide by 168, and perform it like we did in number 5. The percent of homework is 19%. The percent on sleep is 32. Work is 9. And other is 31. Technically, those should add up to 100%. We could be a little bit off just based on rounding. Number 7 says, studies have shown that college students get about 6.5 hours per night on average, but that academic achievement improves when students average 8 hours of sleep. What percentage of hours in the week would be devoted to sleep if you get 6.5 hours? What if you get 8? How do we think our friend is doing? So 6.5 would be 6.5 hours out of every 24 hours. Go ahead and use your calculator to divide that out and convert it into a percent, either by moving the decimal or by multiplying by 100. Go ahead and round to the nearest whole number. Our students should be getting 27% of their time is spent sleeping. If they get the recommended amount, the 8 hours, go ahead and convert that into a percent, and you should get about 33%. So the question is, how is our student doing? Our student is getting 32%, so they're pretty close, but they could probably use a little bit more sleep. Moving down further on the page, on page 5, number 8 describes how a circle can be divided into 360 equal units of measure. These are each called degrees. So every circle is divided into 360 degrees. Multiply the decimal form of the percent in question 6 by 360 to find the number of degrees for each section: class, homework, sleep, work, and other. Round to the nearest whole degree. So I know that for classwork we had 9%, which was 0.09. I am going to multiply that by what? How many degrees there are in a circle? 360. 0.09 times 360 gives you about 32 degrees. These are all measured in degrees. I'm going to put it up here so I don't have to write it with each number. Do the same thing for each. So for the homework, I had 0.19% times 360. This 360 is not going to change. What's going to change is whatever percent we have. 19% of 360 is about 68 degrees. Sleep was 32%. 32% of 360 is about 115 degrees. Work should be 32 degrees. Work and class are the same. And other is 112 degrees. If I add all those up, they should total 360, the total number of degrees in a circle. If it's a little bit off, that's okay, because rounding makes that happen sometimes. We can use these degrees now to actually create a pie chart. A pie chart is a diagram used to compare the relative sizes of different parts of a whole. For example, the pie chart to the right, adapted from a USA Today survey, describes people's hand-washing tendencies when using a public restroom. In this case, the whole number is the number of people surveyed, and each of the parts is the percentage of folks who gave a certain response. Since 70% of the respondents said always, the always category fills 70% of the circle. We do 0.7 times 360, that gives us 252 degrees. The sometimes is 29%, which is 104 degrees. The never is just 1%, which is about 4 degrees. So let's see if we can create a pie chart based on the table we have in number 8 for degrees. So turn to page 6, and we are going to create a pie chart using the information. Let's go ahead and start with the very first one. You'll notice that your pie chart here is broken into 10 degrees each. Each little line is 10 degrees. Class time was 32 degrees. So I'm going to count from 0, start at 0, and go 10, 20, well, let's put my first line here at 0. 10, 20, 32. It's a rough estimate. and I'm going to put a C in the middle of that for class. And that's at 32 degrees. Look back at your table, 68 for homework. I have to take 32 plus 68 to find out where I need to end. Use your calculator. That should end up being 100 degrees. 100 degrees is right here. And that was homework. The next category is sleep. Sleep was 115 degrees. So I'm going to add 115, which gives me 215. So I'm at 100, 110, 120, 30, I have to go past 80, 180, 190, 200, 210. It's going to be right about here for 215. And that was sleep. We're at 215 now. So you keep adding on to where you were last. The next category is work, which is 32 degrees. So I'm going to add 32, which tells me I should be at 247. So we were at 90, 200, 210, 220, 230, 240, 250. So it's about here. And that is work. And then the rest of the time is other. It's not pretty, but that's your pie chart. Number 10 says, does the pie chart make it easy to analyze the amount of time the student spends on each activity? It's somewhat of an opinion question, but generally seeing a picture, I can look at this picture very quickly and say, oh, other and sleep are the two biggest categories. There's lots of things you can do with that. So you'll see here at the bottom of the page, it tells you how to draw a pie chart. You find the percentages that fall into each category. You multiply those percentages by 360 degrees. You draw your boundary line from the 0 mark to the center. And then each time you get a new boundary, you add on the new angle measurements. In the group section, you're going to do a poll. Let's go ahead and give you some numbers that you can work with in case you're doing this on your own. Let's say we have a class of 25 people. And let's say we have 3 students who love it, 5 who like it, 10 who can take it or leave it, 4 who don't like it, and 3 who hate it. Let's make sure I added that up right. I think I did, yes, that should add up to be, did I write 8, 18? Yes, this is a 4. This is hard to read. I'm going to cross that off and make it look better, but that's a 4. Yep, we're good. It says 25. Let's give you some data to do the second box. Let's say we have a class of 25 and we have 22 who live with their parents, 20 who work and go to school, 3 who have children, 15 who are taking more than 10 credit hours. Let's say we have 10. Let's say we have 10 here as well. I drive to class. Let's say that's 16 of you. I was born in a year that begins with a 1. Let's say that's only 5 of us. I know what my major is. Let's say that's all 25 of you. So that will give you some data to use if you're having to work on the group work on your own. There's a nice little review here of percents if you'd like to read through it. And next you're ready to start the group work that begins on page 8.